The subway doors hissed open with that familiar New York sigh. The kind that says the city's been awake too long. It was just past 8 a.m., and the 4 train heading uptown was its usual chaos. Backpacks pressing into ribs, headphones blaring 2-second previews of someone's playlist, the scent of dollar coffee and wet concrete clinging to coats. She stepped on quietly. No one really noticed her. A black woman in her late 30s, dressed in a soft gray wool coat, black gloves, and braided hair tied neatly back. She held a canvas tote to her side, the strap pressed close to her chest. Her eyes were focused on the floor, not out of fear, but out of habit. She moved like someone who had spent years making herself small, on sidewalks, in boardrooms, in elevators. She knew which way to shift to avoid bumping a stranger. She knew how to disappear without ever leaving. A teenage boy wearing a Yankees hoodie looked up as she passed, then looked right back down. She found a spot near the middle of the train, hand gripping the pole, tote bag tucked between her knees. 3 stops later, he entered. White, mid-20s, loud, hoodie half-zipped, jaw working on gum like it owed him something. He swaggered in like the train belonged to him, shoulders wide, music leaking from a tiny Bluetooth speaker clipped to his belt. He saw her. Didn't say anything at first, just stood too close. One hand on the same pole she held, the other hanging loose like he wanted someone to ask about his tattoos. She shifted slightly, trying to create space. He smiled, not friendly, not curious, the kind of smile that turns your stomach, like it's waiting to become a sneer. "Hey," he said, his voice cutting through the buzz of the train. "You always ride this line or just feeling adventurous today?" She didn't respond. He leaned in, just a little. "No hello? That's rude. Thought y'all were supposed to be all friendly and soulful and shit." A few heads turned, then turned back. Her grip on the pole tightened. "You deaf or just too good to talk?" he asked louder. "Bet you got a name like Shaniqua or something." "Am I close?" Still, she said nothing. "Man, you people are wild," he laughed to himself, shaking his head like it was some inside joke. "Always walking around like the world owes you something." No one intervened. A man in a business suit kept scrolling on his phone. An old woman at the end of the row pulled her purse closer. The train rocked slightly as it barreled through the next tunnel. "You know what I think?" he said, stepping even closer. Their arms brushed. "I think you think you're better than me. You think that bag you holding makes you some kind of queen." She flinched, not at his words, but at the sudden closeness. He noticed. "What's in there anyway?" he asked, tapping the top of her tote with 2 fingers. "Books? Your secret spell recipes? Maybe a mirror to check that attitude?" She shifted again, silent. The bag stayed clutched in her grip. The train lurched. She lost balance for half a second, bumped his arm. He exploded. "Yo, don't touch me, lady." Everyone heard it. His voice echoed off the subway walls. The silence afterward was louder. "God damn," he muttered, stepping back but not far. "You people always playing victim." Still, no one spoke. She looked around. Nobody looked back. The boy in the Yankees hoodie stared at his shoes. The businessman adjusted his tie like it was suddenly choking him. She blinked hard. Once, deep breath in. And still the train kept moving. Still, no one helped. Still, he kept smiling. And from that moment on, everyone knew something had shifted. They just didn't know how much. She wasn't the kind of woman people noticed in a crowd, and she liked it that way. Her name was Alana, raised in Georgia, built in Brooklyn. She had a softness to her voice, but a steel in her spine. Years of being talked over in rooms she deserved to lead had taught her how to speak less and carry more. She wasn't flashy. She didn't wear loud colors or designer bags. She didn't need to. Everything about her said she had nothing to prove. She worked as a senior copy editor at a publishing firm off 6th Avenue. Quiet, detail-obsessed, invisible to the world unless she needed to be seen. The kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday, even if they forgot hers. That morning she had taken a detour. Stopped by a tiny market near Prospect Heights, her favorite. Picked up 2 Honeycrisp apples, a fresh sourdough loaf, and a small jar of orange blossom honey. It was her husband's favorite. She smiled when she saw it on the shelf. He always said it reminded him of a beach they'd once visited in Marseille. He wasn't home often. His job demanded travel, unpredictability, long gaps of silence followed by whirlwind weekends. But when he was home, he made every second count. She never called him by his full name in public, not because she was hiding, but because peace was something you protect when you finally have it. He called her Alani, soft, loving, like it was a melody meant just for her. They had met in the most unexpected way: an airport lounge delay, 2 bad cups of coffee, one conversation that never ended. He saw her before she saw herself. Even now, when she stood at the edge of crowds, trying to shrink, he had a way of making space for her without asking permission. Most days, she moved through the world quietly. Grocery bag pressed close to her chest, coat buttoned to the top. She knew how to read a room in seconds, knew when to smile, when to leave, when to stay quiet. And she knew deeply that being a Black woman meant learning how to carry yourself in spaces that weren't built for you. Today was supposed to be uneventful. She'd kissed her husband on the cheek before leaving, whispering that she'd be back before lunch. He'd nodded, half asleep, pulling the comforter higher. She'd stepped onto that train expecting the same city she always knew: tough, cold, but manageable. But something had felt different when that man stepped on board. Not the way he looked, the way he moved, like he needed someone to crush just to feel taller. And she'd felt it, that old familiar chill crawling up her spine, the one she used to feel in high school when the white teacher mispronounced her name for the third time and smiled like it was a joke. The one she felt in elevators when men stepped closer than they needed to. The one she felt when security guards watched her hands more than her eyes. It wasn't fear, it was awareness. The kind you build when the world teaches you to always be ready. And yet, no matter how prepared you are, it still stings when it happens. Still hurts when no one steps up. Still breaks something inside when you realize the silence around you is louder than the voice mocking you. She adjusted her bag, fingers brushing the jar of honey inside. She thought of her husband, probably making coffee by now, waiting to surprise her with a dumb joke and a tight hug when she came back. She thought of his hands, how they never rushed, never pushed. And then she thought of the man standing next to her now, loud, leaning, laughing. And for the first time in weeks, she wished her husband was standing next to her. Because when he was near, the world remembered how to behave. The train rattled forward, steel grinding against steel. The kind of background noise New Yorkers forget how to hear. But the tension, that no one could ignore. He was still talking, loudly, too loudly. So what? You think being quiet makes you better than the rest of us? Alana didn't move. Her fingers stayed locked around the pole, her tote pressed tight against her side. He stepped closer, grinning like he was on stage. Look at her. Too fancy to talk, too proud to smile. Probably got some TikTok account full of quotes and filters. No response. Y'all always got something to prove, he muttered, until someone puts you back in your place. That was when he reached for the bag. She flinched, turning her body slightly, trying to shield it. Relax, Queen, he smirked. I just want to see what's in your royal purse. He flicked his fingers against the strap. The bag slipped. One apple tumbled out, bounced once, and rolled beneath a seat. Then the loaf of bread. It hit the floor, landing with a dull thud. The jar of honey was next. He knocked it loose with his elbow. It clinked as it rolled, catching a patch of light, then spinning away into shadow. She dropped to her knees instinctively, heart racing, eyes tracking the fallen pieces. Oops, he laughed. Clumsy hands. No one helped her. A woman in scrubs watched, but didn't move. A teenage boy across the aisle looked at his phone like it had something important to say. Alana reached for the second apple, stretching slowly beneath the seat. Her fingers touched it, and then his elbow came down. Hard, fast. It slammed into her upper back, right between her shoulder blades. The breath vanished from her lungs. Her body jerked forward and collapsed into the metal subway door. The thud echoed. Not like a scream, not like a crash. It was dull, final. She didn't cry out, just gasped, and then silence. Pure, heavy, the kind that fills a space and crushes everything beneath it. She stayed there motionless for a second, one hand braced against the cold steel, the other clutching at nothing. He leaned back like he'd done something clever. Lesson of the day, he said to no one in particular. Don't lean on people you don't know. Still, no one moved. Not the man in the business suit, not the girl with the AirPods, not the older woman who had clutched her purse earlier. Even the boy with the Yankees hoodie didn't look up this time. Alana slowly pushed herself up. Her breath was shallow. Her chest hurt, not just from the blow, but from what it meant. This wasn't new. Not to her, but it never stopped hurting. She looked around again. A dozen faces, all turned away. The man who hit her was still smirking, tapping his fingers against the pole like it was a drum. And in that moment, the train car didn't feel like public transit. It felt like a courtroom, and she was on trial for existing. One apple rolled back toward her. She didn't reach for it. She just stood there, quiet, alone, and the train kept moving. Through the city that promised dreams, through the tunnels that hid the truth, through a silence that had become way too familiar. But something was shifting. Not in her, in the air, like something or someone had noticed. And it was only a matter of time before the reckoning arrived. He had been there the whole time. Standing near the far end of the car, back against the wall, hands in the pockets of a heavy black coat. No one had noticed him. Not really. Just another tired passenger. Eyes calm, body still. But now something in him moved. One foot forward, then the other. He walked slowly, not like a man in a rush, like a man measuring every step. No one saw him coming, not yet. The thug was still grinning, twisting his shoulders like he'd won something. Jason didn't look at him, not at first. His eyes were locked on her. Alana. She stood quietly, shoulders drawn, breath shallow. Her tote bag hung loosely from her arm, the contents scattered beneath the seats like forgotten dignity. He kept walking, step by step. A businessman glanced up, noticed something, and quickly looked back down. The boy in the Yankees hoodie shifted in his seat. The woman in scrubs pulled her bag onto her lap. The silence started to shift, not louder, heavier. Jason stopped just 2 feet away from the thug. The man didn't notice, still running his mouth. I mean, seriously, the thug laughed. These people walk around like they're untouchable. Jason's voice came low, calm, steady. Pick it up. The thug blinked. What? Jason didn't repeat himself. He just stared. Eyes like cold steel. Voice like gravel, soaked in rain. The bag, pick it up, and apologize. The thug turned halfway toward him, confused, then laughed. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Her lawyer? He turned back to Alana, pointing. Man, you bring him back up now? Jason didn't flinch. That's my wife. The air cracked, like something invisible had snapped. Nobody spoke. Not even the thug. His grin wavered. The businessman looked up again, and didn't look away this time. A teenage girl near the middle of the car pulled her phone out slowly, screen facing down like she wasn't sure if she should record. Jason stepped forward once more. Just one step, no more. His presence filled the space like thunder that hadn't hit yet. The thug tried to recover. So what? He muttered. She bumped into me. I didn't even touch her like that. Jason's voice stayed low, even, deadly calm. You hit her. The thug shifted on his feet. Man, it was nothing. She dropped her stuff. She dropped it because you knocked it out of her hands. Jason's eyes never blinked, never moved, just held him there. The thug tried to laugh again, but it didn't land. No one was laughing. Not anymore. Okay, tough guy, he said. You her bodyguard now? Jason didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because the people around them already knew. It wasn't about muscles. It wasn't about a fight. It was about what comes after the world thinks it got away with something. Jason looked at Alana again. She hadn't said a word. But her eyes, they told him everything. He nodded once, and then looked back at the man standing in front of him. You've got one chance. The thug swallowed. One chance for what? Jason's tone dropped even lower. To walk off this train without regretting it. The train rattled beneath their feet. Lights flickered as they passed another tunnel. But no one spoke. No one moved. The silence was no longer passive. It was loaded. Waiting. And in that moment, every single person on that train knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The thug laughed again, but it didn't have the same edge anymore. Man, whatever, he muttered. You acting like this some action movie. Then without warning, he shoved Jason. Both hands, hard, right into his chest. Jason didn't move. Not an inch. He stood like concrete, like gravity chose him over everyone else. The thug's hands lingered in the air for a second too long. It was as if even he didn't believe what just happened. Jason's expression didn't change. His eyes stayed locked. Calm, cold, focused. Dre blinked, stepped back. Then, embarrassed by his own hesitation, he lunged again. Jason caught his wrist mid-motion, one hand, effortless. He didn't twist it, didn't hurt him, just stopped him. And that's when Dre understood. He wasn't fighting a man. He was fighting something else entirely. The second guy stood up. He was heavier, shoulders wide, hoodie zipped to the chin. He stepped into the aisle, chest puffed, voice raised. Yo, Dre, you good? Dude acting like he owns the train. Jason didn't even look at him yet. He released Dre's wrist gently. Not like mercy, like dismissal. Then he finally turned to the second guy. You don't want this, Jason said, voice barely above a whisper. The guy smirked. You serious? He squared his stance like he'd seen boxers do on TV. Man, you think you scary 'cause you talk soft? He lunged. Jason stepped aside like he'd seen it coming 3 days ago. One smooth pivot, one subtle guide with the shoulder. The man's own momentum slammed him straight into the metal side rail of the train. The sound was sharp, a grunt, then silence. He dropped to his knees, arms hugging his stomach, gasping. Nobody clapped. Nobody screamed. They just watched. Phones hovered halfway in the air. Too stunned to record. Dre took another step back. Jason's gaze shifted again. This time toward the back. Another figure moved. Quiet, hoodie low. From the shadows he stepped forward, hands hidden in his sleeves. No one had noticed him until now. Then they saw it. A short, thick baton slipped from his sleeve. Not a cop's weapon, not official, something else. The man didn't speak. He just swung. Fast. The baton cracked against Jason's skull. Hard. The sound was low but deep. Jason dropped. One knee, then the other. His shoulder hit the pole as he collapsed. For the first time, he didn't look invincible. Alana screamed. The whole train gasped. Someone dropped their phone. Jason didn't move. The man with the baton stood over him, breathing heavy, face unreadable. Not angry, not smug, just blank. Alana rushed forward, dropping beside her husband. Her hands shook as they touched his back. Jason, she whispered. Nothing. Then, his fingers twitched. A breath. His head lifted. Slowly. Blood ran down the side of his face, soaking into his collar. But his eyes were still fire. The baton man stepped back, unsure now. Jason rose. One elbow braced, then both feet. He used the pole to steady himself. Didn't say a word. Didn't groan. He just stood. The car went silent again. Alana stood beside him now. He looked at the man who struck him. The man raised the baton again. Alana's voice cut through the air like a knife. Don't. Just one word. Calm. Fierce. The man hesitated. Jason stepped in, too close for the baton to gain power. One hand caught the man's wrist. He didn't twist. He guided. The baton clattered to the floor. The man tried to yank his arm back. Jason didn't let go. Instead, he took a step forward, placed his palm against the man's chest, and pushed. Not with rage, not with force, with precision. The man flew backward and slammed into a pole. He dropped to one knee. He wasn't unconscious, but he wasn't getting up either. Jason turned. Blood still ran, but his stance hadn't changed. Alana looked at him. He looked back. She didn't need to ask, and he didn't need to say a thing. The message was clear. Respect wasn't optional. Not anymore. A shadow moved from the far end of the car. No one had noticed him before. Hoodie tight, shoulders hunched, hands buried deep in a black jacket. He stepped forward without a word and swung. A baton, short, thick, brutal, cut through the air. It cracked against the side of Jason's skull. The sound was heavy, sickening. Jason staggered, then dropped. His knees hit first, then his shoulders smashed the metal pole. And finally, his head hit the steel floor with a sick bounce that made people flinch. Alana screamed. Gasps tore through the train. Phones shot up. Jason didn't move. Blood streamed from his temple, painting a red streak down his cheek and into the collar of his coat. The man who struck him stood above, breathing hard, face unreadable. Not proud, not regretful. Just blank. Alana dropped beside Jason, hands shaking as she touched his back. Jason, she whispered, her voice cracking. No response. A few passengers whispered, did he just kill him? But Alana wasn't listening. She was watching his chest. And then it rose, a shallow breath. His fingers moved, barely. But enough. She leaned closer. Jason, she said again, softer now. His eyes opened. Slow. Not wide, not dramatic. Just enough to find her. He blinked once. Then slowly, steadily, he moved. One elbow planted, then the other. He pushed himself up, like gravity wasn't something that applied to him anymore. Blood still ran down his face, but his eyes were sharp, awake, alive. The man with the baton took a cautious step back, and Jason didn't speak, didn't groan. He gripped a nearby pole and rose to his full height. The train swayed beneath him. Jason didn't. The man raised the baton again. Jason stepped in. Too close. There was no room to swing. Jason's hand shot up, grabbing the attacker's wrist midair. Then without force, he twisted. Precise, controlled. The baton dropped to the floor. The thug tried to yank his arm back, but Jason didn't let go. He stepped forward, placed one hand on the man's chest, and pushed. Not violently, just perfectly. The thug lost his footing and slammed into the side of the car. He collapsed to one knee, wheezing. Jason turned toward Alana. He didn't say a word. She didn't need him to. She was already standing. Their eyes met. And for a second, the entire car was still. Every passenger felt it. They weren't just watching a man anymore. They were watching something else. A force the world couldn't bend. A silence that didn't ask for respect. It commanded it. Jason stood in the middle of the train car. Blood dried on his temple, but he didn't look tired. He looked finished, like something inside him had settled. Around him, silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the scared kind. A silence born from something deeper. Respect. The thug with the shattered elbow whimpered in the corner. The heavier one still sat slumped against the rail, chest rising and falling. The guy who swung the baton? Still on one knee, breathing hard, dazed. Jason didn't look at them. He didn't have to. He walked toward Alana. She was standing now, her coat straightened, her hands around the tote bag. One apple still inside, bruised but unbroken. He picked it up from the seat, wiped a spot of dust from the skin, handed it to her. Their eyes met. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She took the apple and gave a faint nod. Her hand brushed his. It stayed there. The train began to slow. Next stop, Grand Central 42nd Street. Nobody moved. No one even adjusted their bags. Jason turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded once. "Always." The doors slid open. They stepped out together. No one followed. No one shouted after them. No one pulled out a phone. They just watched. Not like fans. Not like bystanders. Like witnesses. The kind who knew they'd never forget what they saw. Boots tapped gently against tile. Shoulders brushed side by side. Alana didn't look back. Neither did Jason. They didn't need to. At the far end of the car, Dre still sat frozen against the wall, his busted arm cradled in his lap, mouth open, eyes locked on the door where they'd exited. He wasn't laughing anymore, wasn't sneering, wasn't even sure what just happened. He just sat there, like a man who had finally realized the lion was never in a cage and never needed to roar. The train doors closed with a soft hiss. The car rattled forward into the tunnel. Someone finally exhaled. A woman near the pole blinked hard. Another rubbed her eyes like waking up. A man slowly lowered his phone, realizing he'd forgotten to hit record. But none of that mattered. Because they wouldn't remember the exact words. They wouldn't need to. They would remember how it felt. To see someone take control without chaos. To watch a man who bled but never broke. To witness power that didn't brag. Just existed. Strong, quiet, unshakable. And a woman who never screamed but carried grace like armor. Outside, the world moved fast again. Grand Central buzzed with noise and motion. But somewhere in the back of that train, Kara's silence remained. The kind that doesn't fade. Because on that ordinary morning, something unforgettable happened. And nobody who saw it would ever be the same.